Hi, I'm your host, Dr. Phil Hoffman, and you're joining us now here on Pause. Put on your thinking caps because we're about to get all science up in the house. That's coming up next on Pause. And welcome back to this episode of Pause. And today we have some special guests here with us on the dais. Joining me today is Peggy Veatch, who is the science research teacher at Eldon School District. Welcome. Thank you for being here. And also joining us are Macy Williams and Alli Hoerr, and they are both students in your class, correct?
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit, first of all, it's not a science class like a regular science class, it's a science research class. So can you help us understand what the difference is?
Yes, this class, the students are expected to design their own science research project at specifically a collegiate or a graduate student level to compete in various academic competitions throughout in the state. And they spend all year doing that. There's no tests, there's not the typical homework. They do have to write a very large research paper. They have to design their own procedure. They often work in association with professors at various universities, and they have to tabulate their data, collect all their data, do all their own testing, and then they have to put it all together, have to design a PowerPoint presentation over the project, have to design a poster that we have printed, professionally printed for them. And in the end, they go and compete and hope they do well.
So this whole process, I mean, I think one of the things for me that's interesting is traditionally public education, there's state mandated testing and there are state mandated curricula. Not that you're not doing the mandated curricula, but this is a different animal. So how do you work with all the mandates and all the regular procedures that are expected of a public school system, but yet you're doing something that doesn't exactly fit?
Well, this is taken as an elective science class. So the other classes I do teach have to follow the state mandated rigor and their curriculum and things. But this class, it's pretty much up to us how it is run. And really most science research classes that other schools have, they're all pretty well run the same way.
So the process basically starts, I guess, at first with coming up with an idea, right?
Oh yes, that's the tough part.
Right. So how do you assist a student? Because I know for myself, if I was in your class, that would be my struggle, not doing it, but coming up with a good idea.
Yes, as you can see from the reaction, that is the struggle. And it is something we really work hard on. We do a lot of searching online, but I usually try to direct them into some area of their interest, because this project, the idea they get really needs to speak to them. If it's not, they're stuck with this all year long. So if it's not something they're enjoying doing, it's not going to work out. So I try to get them geared into something that they're very interested in and direct them that way to, and then they get on the internet and spend, sometimes it could be months searching for topic ideas. It's very difficult.
So Macy, I noticed that when we talked about coming up with an idea, you kind of laughed. Was that a struggle for you when you first started?
Oh yeah, my first year, there's like a bunch of things, but I couldn't really narrow it down to like what I wanted, and just there's so many things that you can't like do because you can't use humans all the time, or you can't use animals, and you can't hurt the animals or whatever.
So there's a lot of rules and regulations on top of it, just like you would have if you were at the collegiate level. It's the same thing. So Alli, how about you? Was it a struggle to come up with an idea when you first started this, or did something just pop in your head, or what?
It was kind of hard to start to think of something that I was interested in. I found like a few things I was interested in, but most of them were of a high enough level to actually pursue them in this class.
So that's part of the calculation, right? Is that you don't want to do something that's so simplistic that you can't sustain it over that period of time. So who evaluates that? Is that ultimately you doing that?
Yes. Yes, I do know, like when they go to these competitions, the level of competition is extremely high. Like I said before, they have to be collegiate or graduate student school level projects, or they won't do well. So I hate to break little hearts, but sometimes they get sold on a project and I'm like, well, that's probably not going to do so well. So you might want to come up with something else. And we do a lot of that.
And so that process then, once you start walking through trying to pick out a subject, then you have to come back to Mrs. Veatch and say, is this okay, right? Did you guys get turned down in that process originally? What happened, Macy?
Oh, just most of them were like, can't do this, or they're too easy, or stuff
Right.
like that.
And Alli, how about you? Did you get turned down in the process? Or?
Yeah, well, before we can even go to her, we have to have at least 10 ideas. And then from those, she narrows it down to ones we can actually do, and then we get to pick from those.
Okay, so you go through this process. I would assume at some part of the class, one of the things you're doing is explaining the scientific method and how to test your hypotheses and all those sorts of things. Something that I think probably most people associate with college or graduate school, and you're doing it in high school. What gave you the idea that it was feasible to do this with high school students?
Well, actually, I started this 21 years ago at the high school I used to work at. And it's just something, I guess I was crazy. I really wanted to do this with the kids then, and I just started it, and it was very successful there. So when I left that school, I came to Eldon, and they wanted me to get the program started at Eldon, and my girls have done very well. I've got several kids that have done very, very well, because this is our second year of having it at Eldon High School.
So, Alli, I'm going to guess that you have other classes, right? And other things in your life that you probably do besides school. So, this is an elective class, right?
Yeah.
Why in the world would you choose to do all this work?
Well, actually, when before they brought Miss Veatch to our school, a couple teachers took me and a couple other students to meet her. And so I got to see one of the science fairs, and I thought it was really cool, like a really good opportunity to do something great. And so I wanted to do it.
How about you, Macy? It's obviously extra work and extra trouble, and I'm sure extra drama when things are not working out right.
Yeah. I just want to go into the healthcare field, and I thought it would be something good to try to help with that.
So you get into this class with Mrs. Veatch, and you're starting to go through the idea stage and everything, and then you get it narrowed down, and then you pick one, right? So then what happens then? What's the next step once you pick an idea?
You have to develop a project. We work with, like she said, professors at other school or authors of research papers that we've read, and see if we can develop something like either based off what they've done or just something new that they can help us get started with.
So I thought that was a really interesting statement, Alli. Research papers that you've read. So high school students, you're forcing to read research papers.
Yes.
Yes. So when you start that process and you have them looking at these research papers, is it designed to help them understand the process, or are they looking for content, or both?
Both.
Okay.
They're really looking for both. Most of my kids, our school, I will have to say, does a really good job of preparing the kids with the scientific method before I get them. So I really don't have to spend a lot of time teaching them the scientific method. They pretty well already know that when they come into class. So it's really content and trying to figure out, now, how am I going to do this?
And so, Macy, you did this last year as well, right? And I think this is from last year, right?
Yeah.
So what we have here, folks, is we have a copy of the International High School Journal of Science, which is a journal that's international about science. And we have a Eldon's own Macy published in this. And I think you said, Mrs. Veatch, that there weren't too many people in the world that did this?
No, I'm not sure the exact number.
It was like 8 or 10.
I think there was, there was like 8 out of all the projects that were submitted to the magazine, to the journal. They selected those, I think it was 8 kids to publish last year. So it was really neat. I was really proud of Macy for having, because all she did was submit her paper, so it was just selected on the merit of her paper.
So the best you could do is the top 8 in the world.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Right. Shame on her, right?
Yeah, shame, right. So when you look at this, and I want to share with the folks at home that are watching right now, I'm going to read the title of you.
Okay.
All right. The title of the study is The Effect of Forkhead Box P Gene Mutations on Courtship Rejection and Learning Behaviors. So in English, Macy, what did you do?
Well, fruit flies actually have 60% of the same genes as humans. So I looked at this gene that humans and fruit flies have in common, and I just try to figure out like why when people are rejected in abusive relationships, like why they keep going back to that person. And I figured that out with fruit flies.
With fruit flies?
Yeah.
So how? The question then is, how do you do that? How do you figure that out with fruit flies?
I took normal fruit flies, and whenever the males are rejected, they stop courting the female. But whenever I used a mutated allele of the fruit flies, then they kept going after them after they were rejected. So maybe we have that mutated allele that causes us to go back to the same person when we're rejected.
And so how did you know that one had the mutated gene and one didn't?
I worked with Troy Zars and from a zoo, and he had the mutated ones and the normal ones.
Okay, so then you write this all up, right? And I'm looking at this, and this is a pretty impressive looking article in terms of you got your data results in here and a table and everything. All the things that one would expect to see in a regular scientific journal of any kind anywhere in the world. So how long did it take you to conduct the experiment and then to actually turn it into, this is only really 3 pages, right?
Oh man. Few months maybe, some time around that.
They work on the project really the entire school year.
Yeah.
And I forget exactly when you started, but a lot of that time in the fall is spent just coming up with the idea and
Yeah.
developing how do you test that.
Right.
So once she got it set up, though, it was pretty quick and easy
Yeah.
to test. She ran up to Columbia several times, and then he actually sent the fruit flies back with her once she
Yeah.
learned how to do everything. And she did it in the lab at school, finished it. So
It's an amazing thing. So you got this put together, you wrote the draft. I'm sure that it had to go through Mrs. Veatch, right?
Yes.
Of course. And then you submit it. And then you wait, I'm sure, for a period of time. What did you think when you finally got the contact that said, you've been selected to be published?
Well, there was just so many things that we like applied for, and I was just surprised and like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. It's like this huge thing. It's international. So I was just shocked.
So, and that was last year.
Yeah.
That was before you knew what you were doing, right?
Yeah.
So now this year you went back to the trough, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I also want to talk to Alli now, because Alli also has a pretty impressive set of awards that she has picked up here. So you've got the I-SWEEEP and ISEF awards recently. So let's talk first of all about what are those awards and what are they about?
Well, they're both international fairs. I'll get to attend, and then I-SWEEEP. It's an international fair, but it's more geared towards like engineering and helping the environment. And so I'll go to that one and compete. And then also ISEF. In general, it's just like an engineering and science fair, and it's just both of them. You can win like a lot of scholarships that help with college, and you can do like a lot at them.
And have you gone to both of those already, or are you still?
I've been to ISEF before,
Okay.
but I've never been to the I-SWEEEP.
Okay, so that's going to be new, and that's coming up?
Yeah, the I-SWEEEP is at the end of this month, and then ISEF is in the middle of May.
So let's talk a little bit about your research, the projects that you did in order to be a winner in these 2 different competitions.
Well, last year I created a biodegradable plastic that could release medicine. And this year I continued that research and used the plastic to kill bacteria.
Okay, you make me feel very lazy, Alli. So you're in the lab and you're working on essentially embedding medicine in plastic. Is that essentially what you were doing?
Yes.
So how do you get that to adhere? Because I would think that the polymer surface is difficult to get it to adhere to, right?
Yeah. Well, I make the plastic and just put the medicine inside of it as I'm making it. So it's just completely throughout the plastic.
And would this be something like, what kind of an application would you see this being useful in?
Potentially, it could be used as a replacement for Band-Aids. Like bandages, you just use them and they get thrown away and they produce waste. But these, you could use them. They could release medicine into the wound, and then you could just toss them out the window and they'll biodegrade in a month.
Wow. Okay, so I'll see you when you're wealthy, right? I imagine this will be something that folks will have a lot of interest in. Is this the kind of thing, Mrs. Veatch, that they would take to a competition like this and could it become something that might get picked up by a company to further develop?
Yes, actually the patents, the U.S. Patents and Trades Office will be at both I-SWEEEP and ISEF to speak to anybody who is interested in patenting their project. Now, Alli worked with a nanophysicist from Italy, and I do believe he is working on a patent, isn't he, in Italy, because he assisted her through Skype and things, so that was really a neat opportunity for her also.
So that's an interesting part of this story then too, is the fact that here you are, you're in Eldon, he's in Italy, and what was that like trying to talk back and forth? I imagine time zones and everything, very difficult, right?
Yeah, it was kind of difficult, especially with just getting started, because he's very busy, and so we're mostly working around his schedule, trying to find a time when we can Skype and work things out. And also it's kind of hard to understand because he's a really thick accent, and so it's just, we had to like work through everything.
Well, in my experience, doing anything over Skype is, you know, it's a mostly frozen frames, so it's always difficult to, even if you both speak the same language, it's difficult, but trying to do it across time zones with somebody that speaks a different language, that's a real challenge. So when we look at the outcome of I-SWEEEP and ISEF, and you say, okay, I'm going to go to these competitions, does something further come out of that? I mean, can you then win something at the competition above and beyond the fact that you're there?
Yeah, there are a lot of awards given out at the fairs.
Okay.
There's hundreds of thousands of dollars of awards. I think the top award is a $75,000 award at ISEF. So, and they're from all over the world awards, and some kids can be invited to fairs in other countries and things too. So it's too numerous to even,
Wow.
list them all.
Oh, good luck. You're going fishing for big money, right, Alli?
And that's her hope. That's our hope.
Good. And now, Macy, you also, in addition to getting published, now you've won another award, which is actually related to PBS, the PBS Learning Media Stand Up to Cancer Emperor Award. So can you talk a little bit about that and how you came to be involved in that?
It's an award that are given like to kids so that they can get more interested in scientific research and specifically cancer. And Miss Dunham, which is our librarian, and Miss Veatch both told me that there was this contest going on for cancer research, and you had to write a 750-word essay to get into it. And so they knew I was interested in cancer, and I wrote it.
And so once again, this is a case you wait and you find out. What's the feeling like when you find out, hey, good news, Macy?
Oh my gosh, I don't even know. My mom called me, and she was like, have you checked your email? I was like, no. And she's like, well, check it and then call me back. And I just freaked out. I went back to the school because school had been out and told Ms. Veatch.
She did.
Yeah.
That's an exciting day.
Yeah. She was very excited, but it was an exciting day.
Yeah.
So when you think about the outcomes, I mean, ISEF, I-SWEEEP, Emperor Award, all these things that are happening in Little Eldon, right? Which you wouldn't think this is this science powerhouse necessarily, and yet it's happening there. So I know modesty forbids you saying why, but what is it about doing research this way that makes such a difference for students in their education?
Well, I think several things. One is I really think it shows kids what they're capable of doing. Most of these kids would think there's no way I could write a 20-page scientific research paper, or I could do testing at a collegiate level, or go into a graduate research lab at Mizzou or Missouri S&T and actually know what they were doing, and they do that. And so I think that's really good. I think just for their career goals, like Macy has really fallen in love with the science. She'll major in science. Alli, I think she's going to go into psychology, so we're both, isn't that correct?
Sociology.
Sociology. So they're both, near, it's the science field. And and it gives them so many big opportunities. And just listing all these awards, especially in a poor community like Eldon, not everybody has the money to send their kids to college. It's expensive. And so putting these awards on scholarship applications is huge. And that's really, I always say my goal in life is to make get these kids ready for college
So when
and
you
be successful.
when you think about where you want to go, Alli, after high school, you know, where do you envision yourself going to college, and then do you have plans then after you're out of school what you want to do with yourself?
Well, I plan on going to the University of Missouri in Columbia. I'm not really sure what I want to do after that. I'm gonna major in sociology, but I don't really have any definite plans yet.
So you go to school and see what sparks your interest, right? Good. How about you, Macy? What do you see yourself doing?
I want to be a physician's assistant, and I'll probably major in nursing or health sciences, and then go on to physician assistant school.
So for you, Alli, in terms of being involved in this class, how has being in the science research class changed your view of what you're doing at school, or maybe what you're going to do in your college career?
Well, it's got me a lot more interested in science, I think. It's made me be a lot more responsible, like more time efficient, because there's a deadline for everything, and you have to meet the deadline or you don't get to compete. So,
Macy, what's the biggest thing that you got out of being involved in this class so far?
Definitely learning how to write papers, and that's helped a lot in English and just everything else.
So compared to doing this, I'm sure your other schoolwork now seems like, oh, I have to write 2 pages, no big deal, right?
yeah.
So when we look at the class itself, obviously you've been doing it for 2 years. What are your plans going forward in the future? How would you like to see the class evolve or change or grow?
Well, actually, I don't know how much it can really grow. Even though it's only been 2 years, it took off last year very well. My kids did extremely well last year. They've done so well that this year we really can't top what they've done this year, because they won both the top 2 spots at the regional fair. You can't go any better than that.
So you can't get any better than taking
No.
the number one.
And then right, and those are the 2 spots that qualify to go to ISEF, and that's really the kids' goal, is to get in those 2 coveted positions. But I really, really am trying to get this science research started at our middle school. And we do have an 8th grade science teacher there who is really looking into it, and so we're going to try to work together and get this actually started when they're even littler.
So if you guys were talking to people who are in 6th grade or 5th grade now, and they're watching this and thinking, I could never do this, what advice would you give them?
You definitely can, as long as you just give it your all. You can't just not try very hard and expect to do good. You have to put all your effort into it.
Alli, how about you? What wise advice do you have for
I would
those
just say
youngsters?
to just try. Even if you don't think you can make it far, you never know what you can accomplish until you try.
Okay, that sounds like that's something that you're teaching them, right?
They don't, and I would suspect that from when we started last year, my kids didn't have a clue what they were getting into, and I don't think I made believers out of them until they got going and actually did it and succeeded and did very well, and then they were like, wow, we can do this.
And when you think back, you said you've been doing it for almost 20 years now, right?
21 years,
Right.
yes.
So when you think back, obviously that 21 years ago, you had this idea that this was possible. I'm guessing that wasn't really common then, that it wasn't a...
Actually, in the area I came from, I'm not sure up here since I've been only, in this area, in this region for 2 years, but in the region that I came from, it was strong for all 20 years. I think the level of competition has gotten a lot since, with technology, the level of competition has gotten a lot tougher. So you can't, the project level has, it used to be you could do a project that was just a really good high school one or a good college project. Now we're really looking at high collegiate or grad level projects. So with technology, the increase in technology, the increase in rigor has been there.
Wow. And I guess one other thing you guys could flout a little bit to people is, the old notion of girls aren't good at science. Rest your case, right? What do you think it is about that notion that you guys have proven so wrong here? What's the magic?
We've just done good.
Plain old hard work?
Yeah.
Right? Nothing very exciting about that, I suppose, but obviously we're able to manage this, and you guys didn't have any problem with it, and you only won the top awards in the country. So there you go. Okay. Well, I want to thank you, Mrs. Veatch, for joining us today. We appreciate you taking the time to come up from Eldon, and thank you, Alli, and thank you, Macy, for coming to visit us and talk to us about your awards. And just a reminder again, we have Macy won the Emperor Science Award, which is through PBS Learning Media and our Stand Up to Cancer initiative. And then Alli has won through the I-SWEEEP and ISEF awards. So we've got all sorts of award winners here, and we want to thank you very much for joining us today. That's it for this time here on Pause. I'm your host, Dr. Phil Hoffman. We hope you'll tune in next time as we talk more about what's going on here in your backyard. That's coming up on Pause right here on KMOS. We'll see you next time.